Welcome to Property Quorum. Now, I know that normally we have a few other people that you would have recognized, but we actually replaced them with the incomparable Silas J. Lee's Wiki Wham. And of course, getting Juliet Babulal of Gunnar Cook, and of course, our stalwart supporter, our chairman, our Lord-in-Chief, Hamish McClare of Surgeon Bay, and myself, Gareth Wax of the Purple Hats. Each week, we put to each other certain topics, which I hope others find of interest. I certainly know that that they cause a stir from time to time, and I think that is as it should be. So before we go any further, let's talk about what today's topic is. It is, of course, the case of the missing buyers. I feel we should need theme music for that. And of course, as is traditional, we're going to start with Hamish.
Of course, it reminds me yet again of a nice piece of music I always used to enjoy. One of the songs by Joan Baez, which many will remember, Where Have All the Flowers Gone? But we're not speaking about flowers today. We are speaking about buyers. But strangely, from my own perspective, I was expecting a downturn in volume to actually sort of permeate earlier in the year, particularly after we had that sort of big upswing in terms of volume that was going through, people trying to sort of get ahead of what was going on in terms of the taxation. They were going to have to do the land tax job and all the rest of it. It didn't happen. However, of late, there has been a slowdown. Although life is a strange thing, isn't it? Because July has been our busiest month of the year. However, that would obviously have been set about by people actually going through the stream earlier on, because very often our instruction, strangely, comes through that little bit later, because many conveyancers will not wait until they don't start immediately with the searches, which can be a sensible sort of ploy. They actually will wait till that little bit later on. So I don't know if it's to do with that. So we might see a big dupe in August. Normally quiet in August because people have children they're on holiday and stuff like that. However, there does appear to be a downswing in the terms of demand, and houses are sitting with the estate agents for that little bit longer before buyers are actually sort of taking a step. And I just wondered, I mean, we've got a couple of experts here who can probably see exactly why that is. We're not going to resolve the issue. We don't resolve issues, but we can speak about them.
Juliet, where have all the buyers gone?
I think they're just being really cautious. They think that, perhaps there'll be a change in the rates, and they don't want to invest right now in the event that these rates drop and, they're stuck with a mortgage product that's higher than they should have, or their predictions that property prices are going to drop. So then why would you want to buy something for more than it actually is? And the market as a whole is just cautious. I think there is that level of caution where people are, especially first-time buyers, they're actually threading with absolute care. I haven't seen a stop in terms of the auction purchases and stuff because of the work that I do. I see that coming in. So heavy investors who are very much they know the nature of the game, and they've been doing this for a long time. I've not really seen a stoppage in that. It's more of the first-time buyers and that sort of market where I think people are just threading carefully. And as Hamish said, with these searches, it might be anywhere from between £300 and £500. That might be an expense that they're just not willing to risk in the event that the purchase doesn't proceed. So they wait until the last minute. So perhaps by the time he gets to see those instructions, the stage of the conveyancing is quite advanced. But where have the buyers gone? I think there is not enough incentive for these buyers. There's too much projected change for them to want to invest in that, because it's a scary process. It's really buying property where you've lived with your parents or you've rented all of your life. It's just really a difficult thing, or it's something once you get into it, it's mind-boggling. So I do think the buyers are just being cautious.
But with all due respect, Juliet, Isn't that what you've described as the problem that's always been there? So
Well,
buyers are cautious. First-time buyers are very cautious. They're playing with money, which is the largest single sum that most of them will ever spend.
look,
It's ending very.
I will have had a conversation with you, and I get these pop-ups of different news articles that come up, and I can guarantee you that because cookies are enabled and the computer's listening, I'm going to see stuff from the Daily Mail and the Mirror where these people are actually, they get their news from saying, oh, don't buy now because the prices are going to drop by whatever. That's their level of measurement. They're going to look at that and they're going to think, well, actually, instead of wasting a 20 grand here on a property, I could use that to buy the furniture and do other things with it. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to play it for the long game. So yes, I think that this is always the case. But now that the economy is where it is with the government that we've got, and every single time you look at one of these articles, it's all about, what the government is going to do next. And it's just so uncertain that for a first-time buyer to actually look into this and say, look, I'm going to spend my hard-earned savings on something where, you think about it, you buy something, you go to the shop today, you buy something, next week you go back to the shop and it's on sale. It's 50% off. You actually have done yourself out. You could have taken that 50% and do something else with it. And it's the same thing with property sales. And I think that's how they're looking at it. And also there's so much more surety in renting at the moment, waiting it out, not rushing into, oh, I'm going to make an offer, I'm going to jump into this and then realize, well, the budget isn't quite there. So people are just looking at that. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's an excellent thing that people are getting themselves a little bit more educated, so to speak, so that they know exactly what they're getting themselves into. If the government introduces more schemes like, these help to buys and things like that, perhaps certain parts of the market are waiting for certain schemes to be introduced so that they can then, perhaps upgrade to a better property rather than settling for what they can currently afford. So there's a whole host of factors. And while those factors still exist, we're at a time, I think, in the economy that we've not really had or not really experienced in terms of this level of uncertainty. So this is why you're seeing what you're seeing, the trend of there being less buyers.
Silas, it appears that this is a matter of almost a lottery about whether or not you put your money into the property today and then find out that I could have got more bang for my buck tomorrow. Should they just take it all down to the 230 at Ascot?
I think if I had that ability to make money gambling, I'd definitely be in a different profession. But from a point of view, just to echo what Juliet's been talking about here, I think I was always told when I started my career in property that the one thing that underpins the property market is confidence. And exactly as Juliet's saying, there's a lot of uncertainty about at the moment. And if we don't have confidence in the financial outlook in terms of the economy, whether or not we're going to have a job or not, whether we've got spare income because more of our income is now being taxed, I think that is what causes people to be more cautious. And in fact, this is what surprised me so much in 2020 when we had the lockdowns and people were unsure whether or not they'd have a career or even whether or not they were going to be here a year later, that the property market went crazy. And that to me was a real eye-opener in terms of the study of human behavior. Why did the market react so emotionally where people were chasing houses when the logical stance was, well, we don't know what the world's going to look like post-pandemic sort of thing. So I think confidence is a big thing. And I think that confidence is being slowly eroded and has been certainly over the course of the last couple of years. And it's no surprise that buyers are sitting on their hands because what do you do when you're not confident? You certainly don't rush into things.
Hamish, apparently it's all because people are running scared.
I don't think scared so much. I think people are getting a little bit more canny. It'd be interesting. This would be an ideal program for Wendy to be sort of speaking with us. That she does. She's very busy this week. So, but I think because she is working very much all the time with those first-time buyers, so she can understand the mindset more effectively than we can. However, given the opportunity that we have at the moment, people have got the time to make the decision. What we did have sort of previously, I think, and it does, we do know that it goes up and down and up and down. What it was, there were so few houses coming onto the market. People had to sort of dive in almost sort of too quickly to grab that particular property, because as soon as it was on the market, there it was actually sort of gone to a certain extent. There was an offer going in because there weren't that many. Now we've got more properties available within the market. People can actually sort of take their time to actually sort of look at it. But the most important thing is, as both Silas and Juliet have alluded to, is the confidence that people have to move forward. And I think, well, hang on a bit. We can actually sort of see the Bank of England are reducing their rates almost month on month, or they're threatening to month on month, or the media is suggesting they ought to month on month. So that buyer is being a little bit more wise in terms of what they're actually doing or having to do, and saying, oh, crikey, that's been on the market now for sort of 3 months. I wonder if I drop the price by a couple of grand, I'll just wait and see if I drop the price. So I think it is people getting more canny as to what's sort of going on. But there's certainly confidence does make that difference. The more confident we are, if we had an economy that was really, really running sort of very, very smoothly, it would be different. But we don't see a slowdown in terms of many of the buyers coming from overseas. They still have an interest in what's going on in the UK.
Juliet, to me, when there's a perceived slowdown like this, that means there's a massive opportunity.
Oh, of course, of course. I mean, it's always a bargaining negotiation game. And if someone's looking at a particular property, they can actually do a property watch on house prices, or Your Move or Right Move or one of those websites. And you can see when the properties have actually been reduced. And I mean, from personal experience, I've been eyeing up a property, and I've been eyeing it up for a long time now. And I know what I think I can get for it. And it's been removed from the market twice. When I saw it removed, I actually thought, oh, someone's bought it, perhaps a private sale, etc. And then they put it back on after they've removed it, and they've said added to the market, and they put the up-to-date date. And that's because there was really no desire for it. And so it's just this tactic. And when I see tactics like that, I'm thinking, actually, I can wait this out. Whether or not, I think, if I could call it, we probably have a slightly higher buyer's market than we do a seller's market. So if you do your homework, and there's so much research out there, you've got we always say, the right professionals around you who can guide you, you can really get yourself a bargain. What I'm finding with the foreign investors are, they know that the prices are likely to, whether it's in 10 years time or 20 years time, they're in it for the long haul. They're not in it to make a quick buck, sell it and spin it like, a sort of an investment client. They're here for the long term. Most of them are investing in HMOs. They're investing in this buy-to-let market. They're doing it in the north. They can see the profit margins that that they've been given, and it makes sense. And so for them, economically, they're not within the remit of what we're seeing daily. When you see, Rachel Reeves has done this, or she said this, etc. They're not actually looking at that. They've looked at the bigger picture, which is, again, it's just from a different investment lens, I think. But the ones that this sort of the topic is targeting, I think, are those first-time buyers. I think there's just so many factors that you look at, and that's where they've all gone. Because the other markets, I've not seen them. I haven't seen missing buyers. I haven't seen missing buyers in terms of investors or developers buying property to develop up. I'm not seeing that at all. What I'm seeing is they're holding on to it for a longer time because it's taking longer for them to get planning, or they might say, look, I don't want to implement that planning anymore. I'm going to sell the property. So I'm seeing that kind of thing. But in terms of the slowdown, it's in relation to these first-time buyers.
Silas, I see you nodding away. This is, I'm going to repeat the same thing to you. Surely this is the time for great opportunity. If lots of people are holding back, that means that other people who can spot the opportunities can surge forward, surely.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Gareth. And when Juliet was talking, it was casting my mind back to 2008 when I've sort of first set foot into the arena of investment, which seems like eons ago now. But anyway, I'll just share a quick example of how quickly the market can move.
Just after the call, I think. Yes. Go on.
So in 2007. There were 3-bedroom semi-detached properties in the area that I was investing in that were selling for about over 100,000. In 2008, 2009, we were picking them up for 55, 57, 59,000. And there were literally no other buyers about. I remember going to an auction in Birmingham, a big city auction at a football ground, lots of people there, but by the fourth lot, nobody had raised their hand. And the auctioneer stopped the auction. He said, "Is there anybody in this room here who has come to buy a property?" And literally said, "We'll just go to that lot. I'm not going to sit here and go through 90 lots with no bids." And that was how quickly things can change. Now, I don't think we're anywhere near that at this moment in time, but it would only need the spark of one incident like another credit crunch or some other factor that might just pull the rug that could change the market very quickly. So if people are looking to sell, price is always the factor. And if everything else is at a high level, and as Juliet's pointed out earlier, price is at a certain point, but in her mind, she knows if this price comes here, I'll buy it. And that's how people succeed in this market. If they want to sell, price is the factor.
Juliet, it seems to be that everyone's sitting on their hands waiting for the right price.
But that is the right thing to do. If you rush into something and you find out, I mean, it all depends on what's your driver. And I just think if you stop and you look and you observe and you do your homework, you can get a good deal out of this. Those properties that Silas is talking about back in 2008, if you did valuations on them now, the investors would have made their money back perhaps twofold. And that to me is what this game is all about. But you're talking about someone who looks at this day in, day out. This is not someone who's looking to leave the house of mum and dad. I'm fed up. I need my independence. I have to get out of there. Because if that's the driver, they're going to jump into it with their parents' deposit monies and get something, and then realize in a year's time, actually, if they went to do a refinance, its property's not stacking up because they paid more for it than they should have. And that to me is where, if your driver's emotion, you're likely to get a little bit bitten. So it's about taking it, one step at a time, doing your homework, and a little bit of waiting.
I want to address a couple of messages that have popped in from Spencer, who's contributed before now. I think a big part of it comes down to the current economic climate, with the cost of living on the rise, increased taxation, higher council tax on second homes. A lot of people are pulling back on discretionary spending. What say you guys? Hamish?
Well, he's quite right. And he's obviously a discerning soul, and he's looking at the way exactly as has been sort of mentioned by both Silas and Juliet on this particular sort of matter. And interestingly enough, this is exactly the kind of topic. If we had Chris Gilson with us from Route Home today, he would be saying ideal time. This is a time where you can actually project, you can actually look and see. You've got the time to actually sort of do it, rather than having to, like Julia said, you don't want to have to jump into things. You want to take your time to evaluate. So very, very good point, Spencer.
He's actually got a follow-up point, which is a report suggesting Rachel Reeves may need to raise taxes to address a 51 billion black hole. It's just that people, I remember we used to throw around millions and think that's an absurd figure. And now we're up to billions as the normal currency of this kind of conversation. How do you think this will affect buyer confidence moving forward? In an environment with council tax and the cost of living already rising, could the prospect of further taxation deepen the current hesitation we're currently seeing amongst first-time buyers and renters? And this to you, Juliet. What say you?
agree. The theme is caution and lack of confidence. Okay, that 100%, that is the theme throughout. And those two words describe the situation at hand. In terms of what sellers should do, they themselves, I mean, you shouldn't, if you've got a debt to repay and you're trying to sell your property and someone's offering less than that debt, then you're obviously going to have a black hole as well. So perhaps for that person, it's a waiting game, or it's a restructure of their portfolio or their properties, or a rethink of what they're able to get. Because if people are trying to beat you down on your price and you've got a mortgage that's higher than that price, that will affect a seller. So I think for the sellers as well, it's a waiting game. I mean, the market changes. It's sometimes a buyer's market, sometimes a seller's market, and it will change again. That's just the nature. Silas said, look, it's surprising how quickly the market changes. It's for you to be, both buyer and seller, vigilant enough to manage that timing. And once you get the timing right, you can get yourself, a good deal, or get yourself, done well out of this.
So Silas, it's just waiting for the pendulum to swing the opposite way. Is that what we're saying here?
I think it's an interesting point, and I'm hearing a lot about this everything bubble at the moment, which if you look at the stock market and other areas, prices seem to be inflated. Right. But to the point where wages haven't followed the same trend. So there naturally becomes a point where everybody's maxed out. We can't spend anymore, and prices have to level off. Now, our market's been distorted because we have more overseas investment, perhaps with more money, etc. But at some point that levels off because the return just isn't there. It's right. What happens afterwards. Does the roller coaster pull back for a little bit? And if so, by how much? And that's the point that people need to bear in mind. When the market's good, you don't need to reduce price to sell. When the market's where it is at the moment, price is your only variable to attract people across the threshold. And that's what people need to be savvy about, as Juliet's quite rightly pointed out. Is it worth taking that little bit of a hit, perceived hit, because that price isn't realised until the cash is in the bank, in order to find the buyer and move on?
Hamish, would you take us home, please?
Well, with Spencer's sort of addition in there, I mean, that's three experts we've had, all really alluding to various different aspects of what is going on. And the big word there is confidence. And certainly buyers want to move forward with confidence. If they're hesitant, Juliet will sort of speak about this, because so many people, if people are hesitant about what they're buying partway through the process, it doesn't half mess the mind up of everything else that's sort of going on within it. It does impact upon, even worse if there's a chain involved. And one of those people is starting to get really, really wobbly. And you're having to sort of speak to them and reassure them, or whatever it happens to be. And they're humming and they're hawing. It's a tough old thing. It's a tough old thing. But yes, people want to move forward with confidence. It's a big thing. But there's some great opportunity as well. Speak to the right expert.
Well, indeed. It's always great having experts around you. I'm always thankful for it. Thank you so much, Juliet Babulel of Gunner Cook, and of course, Silas J. Lees stepping into the breach with Wiggy Wham, and Hamish McClare, our Lord Master of Searching Bay. And to all of you out there, never fear, just wait a couple more minutes, have a cup of tea, the pendulum will swing the other way. I would say, hang on to your hats. Good stuff around the corner. Thank you very much all for watching. Until next week, keep your feet on the ground, reaching for the stars, and please look after that mental health. Bye-bye now.